I used to do maths every day, and I used to do it on pen and paper, and my daughter does it on an app. I still can't understand it, but she is learning. So we have to innovate our own ways of teaching STEM and also get them to nurture curiosity and innovation. I'm sure many people have already spoken about this. What is STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I believe that the main focus of STEM is not just by itself, but the fact that it is interdisciplinary. You cannot have science without maths. You cannot have technology without science. I will go ahead and say in today's world, you probably cannot have history without some kind of technology. So we are looking at interdisciplinary learning and problem-solving skills. Science teaches you to look at a problem in different ways, different perspectives, and come up with a solution. So it's extremely important that we understand and find new ways of teaching STEM so that we tell our children and our students it's okay to think differently. It's okay to have other opinions and other ways of thinking. The reason I feel STEM matters today is, of course, as an Indian, I can say our global competitiveness came mainly because of IT, software. When I was going to school, all my friends were doing software, and I thought it was crazy, but it has helped India to become a global powerhouse. And it has helped Indians to go all around the world. So STEM today matters. And I live in Cambridge. I can tell you that every day we hear the innovation that happens. And that is what makes Cambridge special. So innovation and all this comes together as economic growth, what we all crave for. Cambridge by itself is the home of three big companies, AstraZeneca, ARM, completely different companies, but which are driving forward STEM. And this is in the schools, this is in our lives. I think STEM today is even more relevant than it was when we were probably growing up because of AI. We cannot escape. In 1 year, AI has gone from just this idea people had, a fun thing to play with called a chat GPT. And I have started using Copilot and I'm floored. What you can do with AI today is impressive. And as teachers, if we don't adapt, we are not preparing our students in this rapidly evolving world. Third is, yes, it's important to know how to work with AI, but what AI still cannot do well is innovation. It will happen, but if we want to find a cure for cancer or find how to grow better crops using the resources we have, we still need to work with AI. AI is useless if you don't know how to work with it. And this is my main take after playing with AI for the last 1 month. It gives you output, but even to understand that output, you have to know the subject. So it is important that actually we go back to teaching our students the foundation, the basics of biology, the basics of maths, the basics of physics, not just keep showing them how to use AI, but to teach them the foundation and then creativity so that they can take all that foundations to build new things, not what we already have the way we have done, but to just go out of the box, think differently. So yes, in a future governed by AI, innovation and creativity is what sets us apart. And there again, I want to go back to Connie, and I like how you have talked about STEAM, because it's really important to integrate arts, I think, into STEAM today. It also brings it home, especially in primary school. I have seen this. Most importantly, I think, even if a student is not interested in STEM, I speak about STEM all the time because it helps us understand the world around us. We have to understand our bodies. We have to understand our resources and how to make good use of them. And this is just common sense and general knowledge. If we let our children sit in maths classes or science classes, get bored and not learn anything, it has an impact not only on their future, but on our future as well. So how do I approach this? All of the learning that we do is experiential learning at EF. So we bring students and we let them go. We do a lot of hands-on activities, experiments, and projects. My favorites are spaghetti bridge. We used to ask students to create or build race cars and race them. And I remember that my daughter did the same in primary school. It's a great way to get students to think about how vehicles are built. In a world where we are going to have driverless cars, if you want to work with them, you have to still understand the fundamentals of how vehicles work. So a lot of active learning, and I'm sure everybody has spoken about this. Gone are the days where we used to just sit in a room and a teacher would give us all the knowledge. Today, I do most of my lessons on hands-on activities. And the students surprised me. I gave a homework of a model of a heart, and one of my students came back with this beautiful model with Play-Doh. It was so impressive how she had used colors to get the different parts of the heart, and I would never have been able to do it. So our students can teach us as much as we teach them. So it is important to kind of think of ways where we can make it experiential. Another advantage of experiential learning is, of course, it develops collaboration. I remember when I saw this heart project, I was the last one to see it. The students had seen it from the different stages because they knew it. And it helped the whole school learn better about the topic than if it had just been one topic in one classroom. So it's great for collaboration, and it encourages critical thinking, because when students are active, they discuss, they want to find new ways of doing things. They are not just consuming, they're producing. And all this fosters critical thinking. How could we be more critical? Is this the right way to do it? And going back to my heart experiment, one of the big things I enjoyed about this was they had got the separation between left and right ventricles right, and it was so important because I told them, you see, in real world, this is how we keep the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood separate. So it's a great way to think critically and to collaborate. Another thing I do a lot in my class and I do at home is personalizing instruction. Every student is different. They have different learning styles. We may have some students who love writing. Last year, for instance, I had one student who just loved drawing. And we got her to draw a lot of the biological diagrams and share them with the school, and it helped her to showcase her talent. Another student would not even bring a paper and pen, loved watching videos. So in every lesson we had some part where we used videos, and in the UK we have plenty of resources for this. Another student loved taking notes, so I was able to give her very clear pointers and colors. So we have to recognize that every student is different, and while we can't do every case, we can create lessons where we cater to different learning styles. And I think another thing I do when I do personalizing is I take the students' opinions, I ask them, and they have complete ownership of their learning. So we decide what we want to do together, and then as a team, we build a lesson. For example, I had a request for an escape room in the classroom. It took some time, but I was in the end able to put escape room in a lesson on DNA and RNA. So we can personalize instruction and foster student ownership. The third thing, I think it goes back to my personalizing idea, is to engage all learners. Very often, some students just sit at the back of the room, they lose interest. And according to me, this is one of the things that happened with my daughter. She just lost interest. So it's extremely important that we engage all learners. As I said, it is not just because they have to go and have a STEM career. To understand the world around us, they have to be engaged. We have to try our best to use real world examples, case studies, and find what they can relate to. And I also try to use connect STEM with their interest and experience. As I said, I do now a lot of talk of AI. Few years ago, I used maths a lot to talk about finance and how how we have to use finance and economics, for instance, and it gets them to think about all these subjects in a different way. The fourth part of my teaching strategy is providing feedback. As teachers, we have a lot going on all the time. And somewhere we forget that students, after they finish doing a task, they need feedback. They need time to reflect on what they did well, what they didn't, what can be improved. They have to reflect. And as I became a more experienced teacher, I spent less time planning lessons and more time providing feedback and engaging with the students to get them to reflect on what they have learned. And all this came together to create a learning community. Even now, as I have students who have gone on, done PhDs, and we still talk about what we learned in that lesson or what it was that piqued the curiosity. My favorite story is of a business student I had who got bored in the class, and I encouraged him to learn a software programming because I actually did that because I wanted to just give him something. And interestingly, that was a student from Kazakhstan. And he gave up business, went on to study programming, and got into Facebook. He was one of the best engineers at Facebook, and today he's running his own company. And we still talk about how it was that community where we were all just sitting and programming and trying to learn together that equipped his interest. And later it helped him a lot. So the idea should be that it is a community. We are supporting each other. There is no teacher talking and student listening, but a lot of mentorship. Students teach one another much better and in different ways to what we can. So I'm very big on peer learning and mentorship. And as I said, most of the learning we do is project-based. How do I bring all this? It's a great idea to have all this, but what is the plan? I think what we start with, or I start with, is I set very, very clear learning objectives for myself and for the students and communicate them. At the beginning of term, what is it that we want to do? What should the students be able to do? And I can't do this in isolation because we teach to a curriculum, and in the UK, the state sets the curriculum. Take that curriculum and make sure that we are able to demonstrate to students that it fits in with what is designed. And then I create these lessons. I call it design because I love creating my lessons, because they are all project based, and they are experiments, they are simulations. And I wanted to highlight that I use technology tools in my classes, but it is not a technology lesson. I don't want them to just think that the lesson itself is learning how to use PowerPoint. It's just a tool. And once I have done the design of the lesson, I kind of take a step back, let the lesson run, give the students all these ideas. I watch, I give feedback, I let them learn. And the next part where I get involved becomes assessment. Assessment doesn't mean just giving exams and tests at the end of the term. It is also formative, which means frequently we go over what have we done. Have you learned what you were supposed to learn? Have you been able to learn new skills like collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking? They're extremely useful in life, STEM or otherwise. And as I said, we reflect what can be done differently. What was wrong with using this glue in building bridge versus another? And lastly, I think we should get the students themselves to provide opportunity. So I let 10 minutes, 15 minutes every lesson for them to analyze with each other in groups. What have you done? What could you learn better? What were the challenges that we faced while learning this topic, and how can we get better at this? So this kind of sums up my whole STEM lessons. And not only in STEM, I have a habit of incorporating STEM into every lesson. One I didn't talk about is storytelling. I do entire physics modules where each week we look at a scientist. And this has been the most effective method I have used so far. And when I'm teaching these lessons, I start bringing in other modules, and my favorites are archaeology and history. I don't know how we got there, but I was talking about programming and how in today's world it's no longer just a standalone, but it's used in every other discipline. And we started talking about archaeology, and one of my students did a presentation on this. And even I was surprised at how much today's archaeology uses programming. It is impossible today to live without knowing each other's modules. So archaeologists has to know biology, they have to know physics, they have to know programming and how all this works. Same with business. A businessman has to know mathematics, they have to know calculus. So building in interdisciplinarity into lessons. Wherever I'm teaching, I try to bring the focus back to STEM. Even at EF, when we do English lessons, we use a lot of STEM activities and incorporate them into our lessons so that students hear from different ways and understand. You go to 1 hour, do a lesson, come out, don't forget that. That is just dedicated time. STEM is everywhere. I focus a lot on creating technology, not just consuming technology. Especially today, the students, they know much better than me how to consume technology. They are really, really good at it. I don't think I could ever be so good at using either Canva or using any of the tools that they use. However, we have to tell them that it's not enough just to consume that technology, but to build it. So tomorrow, and this is a problem we are facing in software, where we don't have enough people experienced in the middle. We have the big ones, the big people who created it, all this. But after that, there is a gap, and we hope the gap doesn't continue. So we need more people who start creating technology. Another thing I do a lot is I take children, students out and let them learn by doing. And this could be just during breaks, lunch breaks. We have fun days where we do design prototypes, we do build an app. One of my favorite is Nature Diary. And I don't know if the students enjoyed the STEM more or being out more, but it was a great day out. And they wrote poem at the end of it. So it was amazing to read the poems that the students came up with. I have used this from the internet, but I didn't know how it would work at drop challenge, but it was a very good idea where the students have to drop eggs, but they shouldn't break. I have STEM bins in my class, where, as I said, a lot of projects are already there. So if we want to come to class and just create something new, we have ready ideas. I also feel like we don't do this enough, and that's why I put it there. Making STEM discussions organic part of everyday conversation. For example, this week, there has been this big news about the quasar. I don't know how many students realize what it means. We have been able to discover black hole, a very big black hole, a quasar, bringing home these terms, not just in a physics lesson, but just in another lesson or in easy way that they understand that we are doing amazing progress in science today. Do they even understand how big it was that we are able to create vaccines for so many diseases? And the last two are, I think, important from a student perspective. Let the students showcase their work. I know all teachers do this. You see classrooms full of amazing artwork everywhere. And I walk into schools, I go to many schools, I observe lessons and classrooms. I don't see enough science and STEM and even maths around the school. It is very, very focused on what happens in a classroom. But I think that even at home, we should showcase what they do, because students come up with very interesting stuff. And last is, we do not let our students understand how learning calculus can help them learn economics. We understand it as adults, but the students should also understand how the little things they are learning in class will go on to help them tomorrow understand global issues better, whether it's the UN sustainability goals, which EF is a very big part of. It is a part of our ethos. We are always looking at ways we can make the world a better place. And if we start telling our students from a very young age why they are learning what they are learning, I think they are more engaged. So a lot of talking about how I incorporate STEM, and as a teacher, some of the resources I use a lot of NESA resources, because especially when they are younger, it's a really good way to get the students to encourage projects. The links are here. Something else which we have been using in the last few years since COVID is using online tools for maths, like Spark. Sparks is one of the examples that we have used. I put it out there because when I started doing it and I saw an app for maths, for me, it was really, really difficult. I'm still old fashioned. I think students should write and solve problems. Otherwise, it is not tactical. But I have to say it has been extremely effective. So I have to admit that there are places for apps, even in homework. And another one is open culture. Again, lots of free educational resources, lessons, apps. Student teachers don't have to create everything, but it's important that we keep our, set of projects. I also do something which is I look at education strategies from other countries. And that is why it is very interesting that what you're doing. We have to speak together and understand about the world as a whole. I have seen how science is taught in Japan. I've seen in France. I've seen in India. I have seen in US. And I think when I'm teaching STEM, I try to take these ideas from everywhere, because every country has a different approach. And today I heard Connie talk about Greece. And I think we should look at government policies, strategies, and work together as a world, not just what is England doing and what is Cambridge doing. And I think another very, very important part of the strategy is equity gaps. Do all students have equal access to STEM participation? When I was growing up, this was a very, very big problem in India, because there were just labs which had nothing in them. There were no teachers in schools. Today, the situation has changed completely. And I see that developed countries like UK and US are having that problem where they are finding it difficult to hire teachers. I have no idea how things are in other countries, but we have to close equity. It is important that we are able to reach every student in the country. And we don't know where the next Einstein, the next Elon Musk will come from. So I finish my quick presentation by saying that STEM education is not just teaching students about physics, about biology, about maths. It actually is more than that. It encourages them to solve problems, to think critically, and to think about the future and how they want it to be. Do they want to have driverless cars on the road? How are they built? Do they want to have robots in the house? How are they built? Do they want to have machines which are able to tell them immediately if they have a disease? How are they made? So it's problem solving. I think it also important to focus on STEM education to understand the world and our place in it. We always talk about big things, but as I said about UN sustainability goals, we are still having hunger as a problem, and science knows how to solve it. We are still talking about big problems, water scarcity, climate change. We have to use science to solve these problems, and hence we have to help the students to understand the world and what their place is in it. Climate change is not something which is happening somewhere in the Arctic. It will one day impact us. Water scarcity and floods are already a problem. And I don't always ask students to come to my STEM lessons. As I said, I love storytelling. I often tell stories about scientists, their lives, how did they find what they found, why is a neutrino called a neutrino, and it encourages students to think about STEM everywhere. So I take science to them rather than asking them to come to my lessons. And I think, yes, we should inspire the next generation of scientists, engineers, innovatives. We have to also change the way we teach so that they change the way they learn. And not only their future, but our future also depends on it. So as educators, as teachers, I'm very glad we are having this conversation, and we have to carry it forward. Thank you.